The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook. Use promo code RTRS when you download their top-rated app. And brought to you by Kornblau & Kornblau, the official law firm of The Process, as well as Stateside Urban Crowd Vodka, the official sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe, StatesideVodka.com. On the show today, we welcome, a guy from Philly, one of our own, but comes from enemy territory. Celtics assistant coach Jerome Allen joins us. Jerome has a new book called When the Alphabet Comes. Jerome, of course, went to, was a just all Ivy League player at Penn, coached Penn. I spent a year in high school. He was a senior. I was a freshman at Episcopal with Jerome. And we talked to him about everything, right? Talked to him about Brad Stevens, talked to him about him pleading guilty to wire fraud when he was at Penn.
Yeah. And there's he does it really artfully in the book that we didn't quite get through all of it. Because the book is very good. But it's a really impressive story and a well-told story.
Yeah, and the interview is great. I really recommend the book. It's an easy read and an interesting read. And just honestly, to me, the fact that this happened only a few years ago, really.
Yeah, so recent.
And he's coming out and saying this is when I saw that the book came out, I was like, I can't believe it. I remember when the story came out, and I was like, as somebody who knew him, I was like, oh, I couldn't believe it, right? And then when I saw that the book came out, it seemed to me, oh, that's what Jerome would do. So it's a great book, and it's a good chat. So we thank Jerome for coming on. I mentioned the Corner 3 newsletter. It comes out Thursday. We have something very special coming with Stateside very, very soon, in time for the draft. When I went over there to talk about it, Mike, look at this. Look at what they gave me. I don't know if you can see it. They gave me a Vote Stateside lawn sign.
Sure.
Because there's no one that's gonna get mad at you for a Vote Stateside lawn sign. So Stateside Urban Craft Vodka, distilled 7 times, gluten-free. You can get the 1.75 liter Magnum bottle right now, and just like. But to me, there's great vodka, good vodka, and bad vodka, and Stateside is great, and made right here in Philly. Go to stateside.com. You can get it in all wine and spirit stores. Somebody sent us. It's in liquor stores in Delaware and Jersey. It'll soon be available in 38 states, and you can get it delivered at stateside.com if you're in Philly. So statesidevodka.com.
And a quick voting PSA. So now that you mention it, because we are less than 2 weeks out until the election, you can go to, if you're in Pennsylvania, you can go to iwillvote.com/PA. There are early voting options. There's a lot of them around the city, around the area, to just go and either vote early and bring your ballot with you so you can turn it in, or ballot drop-off places where you can just drop it off. There's a ruling today that said, or a couple days ago, that the Supreme Court basically tied on whether they'll count ballots postmarked by election day. So don't worry about that. Don't wait till election day.
Just get it in.
Either vote in person early or on election day, or if you're dropping off your ballot, get it in now. Don't wait. Do not wait. Send the ballot, drop off the ballot. iwillvote.com/PA. Thank you very much.
I know in Delco, it's funny, they had one voting drop-off box, and then the other day, 32 of them. So now there's 32 drop-off boxes.
It's super easy
Delco.
There's a bunch that it's very easy to find.
The fucking internet, man. Just
Come on.
Look on the internet.
You got it.
Yep, just look on the internet. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Sanchez forever.
Welcome to the Rice to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who must have conflicted feelings that we are bringing an actual Celtic onto the pod. That is Mike Levin.
Jerome was great. Philly guy. He was a delightful guy. Says a couple nice stories about the Celtics, which I, gritted my teeth through. But, it's good. I wish that they didn't whip our ass so bad all the time.
Here it is. Here's our chat with Jerome.
Wow, the Celtics guy really showing up in an Eagles hat as if that's going to warm us up to you.
Yeah. There's a method to my madness.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, Jerome has a new book out called When the Alphabet Comes. Very proud of you for writing a book.
Thank you.
Also coached Penn, played for Penn, an all Interact player at the Episcopal Academy when I first met Jerome.
EPI.
Yeah. So the way I remember it is you were senior when I was a freshman, and every freshman got assigned like a senior buddy that was supposed to show him the ropes or whatever. So I got assigned you, but you did not show me any ropes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, your memory probably serves you correct.
And Jerome, of course, an assistant coach now for the Boston Celtics. Like, look, I feel like we have to get this out of the way right at the top, right? Obviously, you grew up in Philadelphia. You mention in the book, like, Nick Foles, you believe is the greatest quarterback of all time, true Philadelphian. Is there any, I think I know the real answer to this, but when you accept a job with the Boston Celtics, is there anything in your gut that goes, oh, wait a minute, I'm from Philadelphia?
Yes. So when I interviewed for the job, I was meeting with Danny Ainge, and I said, if you would have asked me when I was 10 years old if I wanted to work for the Celtics, I would have said no, right? He did not crack a smile. Like he did not like my joke. So I understand. I get it. Cedric Maxwell and I always go back and forth about the rivalry and the late 70s, early 80s. And he got into a fight at the Spectrum where there was a fan on the front row on the baseline. And he stumbled into the crowd after hitting Andrew Toney with the elbow. And the older gentleman, probably maybe 70, 75, he gets to like shouting at Cedric Maxwell, and Cedric Maxwell hauls off and punches him dead in the jaw. And then he says to me, yeah, that's what I do to Philly guys. I said, how can you count that as a win? The man was 75. So, yeah, but I get it.
You've been there since 2015, right, in Boston?
Yeah, 5 years, correct.
In that time, the Sixers have fallen to Boston quite a bit. Do you have mixed feelings about that when the Celtics aren't playing the Sixers? Do you root for the Sixers, or is it just like I got one team, this is my job, like I'm with these guys now?
I'm not sure if you're gonna like my answer, and I'm trying to get off to a good start with you guys. I have no sympathy for them. It would be not only unprofessional of me, but trust me, I've been through enough over the past 3 years, and I got a chance to see like what this organization is truly about. Whether I work for the Celtics next year or not, I'll be a lifelong Celtics fan, just because of how that organization kind of wrapped their arms around me. And so, if I didn't work for the Celtics, I would be somewhat rooting for the Sixers, because I'm a Philadelphia guy. But while I'm here, it's not even like an issue with me. If I was playing against my mother, I would try to rip her head off. So they would definitely get it as well.
Yeah. You said that the Celtics wrapped their arms around you. The Sixers sort of wrapped their arms around other people's throats and then blame them for their problems. Which is pretty cool. The loyalty doesn't really run that deep in the organization.
I can't comment on that. But
I know it's fine. You could just let me run with it.
Right.
We're Sixers fans, but we're also like not really Sixers fans. Like,
we
that's
hate
the
them
way
at this
things have
point.
gone.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it is now.
I understand it. I mean, not to try to take up too much of your time, but
No, you have all the
Spike-
time in the world.
So Sam and my cousin Terry came to a game during the I want to say it was 2017 playoffs, maybe. So we had played the Sixers. It was opening first game of that series, and they got to the arena early, and he had his Embiid jersey on, and my other cousin had his Iverson jersey on, and pregame shooting. They're down on the floor and they're out there with me, and they walk into the arena after I went and got them. This is around like 4:00. They scream, "Trust the process," clapping and all that. And there's no one in there outside of the players, and they're, it's empty. And they just thought it was great that they were showing off their Sixers fans. But when it was time to throw the ball up in the air, and I gave them their tickets where they were sitting at, I put them all the way up in the nosebleeds.
So Sam, who is you smoke, as everybody knows him, ended up being a really close friend of mine, was in my class, and is the most entertaining person I've ever known in my entire life. And we'll have dinner, me and Arande and Mark Maraglia, we'll have dinner like once every year or two. And I just see him and I'm like, you are the same smoke. Like, I will ask you if you want to come to dinner and I don't hear from you for 2 weeks. And then we all bet whether you're going to show up at dinner or not. Like nothing has changed. He's the same dude.
That is smoke.
Yeah, it is. Well, you mentioned, there's so many things we want to talk to you about. Do you mind if we bounce all around? Because there's so many things from the book, and then there's so many basketball things, like so many NBA things. You mind if we just bounce around? Because you said something that reminded me of a question.
I'm happy to be here. I mean, this is y'all show. I'm just here. So feel free to pull me along.
Well, you mentioned, all right. So the book is really interesting because somebody who went through what you went through, and you ended up pleading guilty to accepting a bribe when you were the coach at Penn, for somebody who wanted to get their son into the school. And the book basically follows you through growing up, but also the last few years of you coming to dealing with that reality. That's why it's called A Life Changed by Exposure. You're part of you exposed.
Correct.
And you mentioned the Celtics, the organization wrapping their arms around you. And you also talked a lot about your children and your wife and how they dealt with all of this. And I compared that to a story you told early in the book about your father, who was a drug addict. And before a big game against Harvard, somebody found him outside basically begging for money, while you were excited to see him.
Sure.
And you were very angry at him. And I wonder if you've had time, and you do talk about it in the book, but time to think about the way that the people close to you dealt with your exposure, and then the way that you dealt with your father's exposure then, and and how you sort of reconcile all of that.
Correct. It's kind of funny. So my dad actually just read the book, right? About 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't sure, how he was going to react to me just kind of being transparent, right? And just, for lack of a better way of saying it, really just taking off the mask. But going through the exercise and writing the book, I just felt like that it was important that I undress myself and not really create something that just was either one-sided, right, or try to depict myself in this, and I hate to use this word because it wasn't a redemptive exercise, but try to paint myself into this position of, aha, I got it, I understand. But throughout the book, there are a number of themes I try to address, and one of them was hypocrisy, right, and how even under the umbrella of judgment, like my life has played out from that aspect. So the story about my father and the palestra and me vowing to hating for the rest of my life was really only the setup to get to my son's Wharton graduation at the palestra, right? Mm-hmm. And to talk about how he felt without really bringing his voice in, but how he had to deal with, for lack of a better word, of how he had to deal with my exposure. So my father's exposure, with the drug abuse, and just my exposure with the kind of failure in character, how the judgment almost really brought out the hypocrisy that I was carrying, because the same empathy and compassion and forgiveness I was unwilling to extend to my dad, I was begging for it from my own children, in particular my oldest son, only because the Wharton graduation was held in the palestra, the same place where like I just shut down from my own father. And so like that, that's real. And what it taught me was that, we all kind of view events with either certain biases or a certain level of kind of understanding where we always separate ourselves from the actual act. And so when it was his turn, I was able to thrust all of those feelings onto him. But when it was my turn to be the culprit, now my whole mindset completely shifted. And so bringing that to the forefront, I was hoping to use that as an example to say maybe we as human beings need to be less judgmental, for lack of a better way of saying it, because when it comes back around, it can really bite us in the butt.
We take a pause from our conversation with Jerome Allen. Jerome, just please quiet for 1 second when we talk about our presenting sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Oh, so no more basketball. All there is basketball futures, but we are in week 7 of what is shaping up to be one of the most painful Philadelphia football seasons just in history. I get my hopes up every single week. I go from really? Well, what happens is you can explain to me if this is like to me it's like the normal track. After the loss, you're like, this team fucking sucks. They're never winning another game. And then like slowly through the week, you're like, this is always a game the Eagles win, like by the end, even if they're 10-point underdogs, and like every time.
I really have done a great job. And it's one of the things that I'm so proud of myself for is after the Super Bowl win, I really have been able to enjoy it as like a show. Yeah, like when the protagonist of a show that you watch fails, you're like, well, that was good though. They did it. That was good writing. And so like it ending on a, the one of the worst 2-point conversions I've ever seen. It was such like that's great. That's exactly how they would lose. Oh, yep. Fun ride.
Oh, it's good that you can feel that way.
Yeah, I can't feel that with the Sixers or Phillies, but I do have that with the Eagles. So that's nice.
Our guys are a 4.5-point favorite on Thursday night. Opened up at 6. Of course, I feel they're going to win 30-10, but it's every week. Every week. Look, the only place that you want to bet on football is DraftKings Sportsbook for so many different reasons. First of all, if you're a new user, use the promo code RTRS, get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 when you sign up. Second, look, there's live betting, right? There's that. I feel like hometown fans have an advantage in live betting because you can take advantage of a team a game that your team's going to lose, even though they're up 10 points. You take advantage of that. That's with the live betting. Look, if you don't want to bet football, MMA, there's still baseball, a few more baseball games. You can bet that. UFC 254 coming up, as I mentioned, basketball futures. And the reason it's the best app, it's clean, it's easy to use. You get your money right away. You can make a deposit right away. It's all very simple. It's all right here in the U.S. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app and use promo code RTRS. When you sign up, get up to $1,000. That's code RTRS to get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 for a limited time. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only, in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, back to the pod.
The book has some of the most raw self-examination that I've ever read, and it's impressive how you can, talk about a moment when you were, whether it's in the courtroom or whether it's talking to your family and feeling like you're, I did this. You're hot-headed in the moment. Like you're in an emotional moment that you're reacting one way, and then in the book you dissect that wasn't what it was about. I was in the wrong because here's what it really was. Like I was really being, I thought that I was being selfless, but really that thing was selfishness in a different manifestation. Was that hard to do, to really look into those moments and talk about yourself and what was going through your head in a way that is, pretty unforgiving?
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be honest with you, so the editor, her name is Deborah Freese, right? And she, as I was going through all the different drafts, right, she kept saying, all right, so why? About everything. Why'd you feel this way? Why do you think, your perspective is this? Mm-hmm. And every time I thought I got to a level of understanding where I thought I was complete, she would come back and say, why again? So in doing that, right, constantly asking myself why, I just kept peeling back the layers, and it helped me to have a better understanding of things. So me in the moment in the courtroom arguing with the sentencing judge, right, that happened in the moment. But upon removing myself from it and upon reflection, having an opportunity to really think about that, allow me to really get to the selfishness, right, or get to the root of what the problem really was, right? As much as I was trying to say, no, it wasn't about me. I didn't do this for me. I'm trying to help others. In all actuality, it was always about me. And so in the moment, I couldn't really get there. And then when I finally got there, it was like, am I going to be true to the project and tell that or withhold that? And I just felt like, it was part of my testimony. And I wanted to be obedient and just kind of deliver it in its rawest form. Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, UW Isaiah Thomas, Boston Celtics Isaiah Thomas, writes the foreword to your book. And he talks about the saddest time in his life after his sister's funeral. And he scores 33 points and plays that day. And he writes, Jerome didn't care. He still had a sheet full of bullet points. And he goes through all the, a bunch of the things that you said he did wrong during the game. And he said when he read this book, it felt like Jerome was breaking down his own performance. And I thought that was a really poignant way to say it. Like you sort of were like going through the tape of your life, or these moments of your life, and diagnosing and being like, should have made that play. Or that's why you did that, but this was the better move. That kind of thing.
Which is kind of like weird, right? So we never have these experiences with ourselves to where that we could do something like that. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm this great writer. Again, I was in the 6th grade on the 3rd grade reading level, and I never thought I would ever be an author. But the beauty of it was that sometimes penning the story, even as I would go back and read my words, it was almost as if like God just took over the pen and was like, this is what I want you to write, right? And so, for him to say that, it was almost like, yeah, Isaiah, that's exactly it. Like, how do you break down your own performance, right, and not have a biased kind of perspective while you're in the moment, which is kind of difficult. And that's why I kind of give Deborah Freeze, so much credit for just, asking me the right questions to help me kind of start penning it the way it needed to be told.
Well, sort of like therapy, I would imagine that as hard as it is to come to grips with all of the things that you talk about in the book, and specifically the last few years, there is a freeing feeling to saying, here's all of it, I said it, there it is, and now I don't have to hide from it anymore. Like I don't have to, there's the idea of shame doesn't exist anymore because I've like sort of put it for you to look at in front of me. Like it has to feel good and freeing to sort of be rid of that in some fashion.
Yeah, that was like one of the reasons why I said, you know what, the question is the moral dilemma is going to be populated on both sides, and I'm okay with it, and some people may understand, some people, may say, but so what, right? But to be honest with you, the release of guilt came, on January the 11th at around 11:30 at night, and when, really, that morning. But the combination of that day, from them cutting the location monitor off my ankle to them putting that plate of dessert in front of my face saying congrats, it was like, I always wanted to be, I wish I would be lying to you if I said I woke up every day saying I want to be a great father. A great husband, right? Now I know that's my first priority, right? That's my responsibility in my union. But a large part of my life, I woke up every day saying I want to be a great father. I want my kids to be proud of me. And it probably stemmed from what I was wishing I had, right? And so for me to do what I did, right, and put their sense of normalcy in jeopardy, right, it's like that was heavy. On top of, the reputation that the basketball program had at Penn, my former teammates, the young men I coached, and the young men that will eventually play for the program. But for my own children, it was like, when they just said that, it's okay. Like that kind of like, let it go. So all I never responded. I just got on social media. Like I never really responded or to like all the articles that was written about the case or about me. And I just is like, you know what, I'm gonna control the narrative, and I'm going to tell, my own story. I don't want it to be on Lifetime or something like that, or have someone else kind of depict me. Like here's my version. The person who experienced it. Here's my version of the story, and trust me, like I'm not going to depict myself in a positive light, but I'm gonna depict myself as honestly as I possibly can.
Do you think you always, I'm going back to thinking about watching you in high school and then watching you at Penn, do you think you always thought about the game sort of like a coach does? Because looking back on it, I feel, maybe it's just because you were a point guard, but I always felt like that was the kind of a game that you had.
Well, playing for Coach Doc at Episcopal, he was going to make sure that, I played the right way. He made sure that I had the proper vision, for the lack of a better way of saying it. Like, he made sure I celebrated my teammates. He made sure we got everyone involved, and he did a good job of pacing me my time at Episcopal. Like I had to go there. I got cut from varsity. I had to play JV, and at the time I thought, he didn't know what he was talking about, or like what did I sign up for? But that just process, he knew what I needed, and so. From Coach Doc to Coach Dumpf and the Larry Brown with the Pacers, like all Andrea Trinchieri and Dushko Ivanovic and Andrea Mazzone, even my coaches in Attilio Kaya, Cesare Pancoto, even all my coaches in Europe. What I tried to do was be an extension of the coach while I was on the floor. And I would like to think, I even tried to, even with some help, coach myself, through this as difficult as it was.
For anyone listening, Coach Doherty, who was the basketball coach at Episcopal, he was my math teacher freshman year, and I'll never forget. He went through and he picked up my homework, which I had done in Penn, which was unacceptable, and he picked it up and he just ripped it up in front of everyone. And he dropped it on the floor, and that is my And then I would say 5 years ago, I saw him. I hadn't seen him since high school, and I saw him at This is the kind of guy he was, right? So that's my memory of him. But I always had this positive memory of Coach Doc. So I saw him at a lacrosse charity thing, that his son was at. And I hadn't seen him since high school. And I introduced myself, and he started had tears in his eyes, and he gave me this big hug. And you're talking about a guy, I didn't play for him, and I had him 1 year, but he was that kind of a guy. He was the kind of a guy who was so tough, but did love the people that the players he coached and the kids that he taught.
Yeah, that was Coach Doc. I remember my freshman year, I had him for math as well, and I had the front row, the front seat closest to the blackboard, and in the corner, I signed my autograph like Jerome Allen. I'm this freshman from the city. And he's just like, "What do you think you're doing? Did you erase that off of my board?" And in my crazy mind, I was like, "One day somebody gonna want my autograph." But yeah.
What was your? We've done this to pretty much every guest we've had. Because the Sixers don't have any guards. You're 47. You look like you're still in good shape.
Come on?
Could you play for the Sixers? Could you please start at guard for the Sixers? What's your game like these days?
My mouth is better than my game.
I believe that.
It's funny story. So, like I said, I just got on social media, and a couple months ago, I didn't even know how to send a DM. And my son showed me how to do it. It's sad, right? My youngest son, and he just turned 11. But on my Instagram, one day I was in practice, and so we got to the bubble, and we had I don't want to say short staff, but we were only allowed to bring, if I'm not mistaken, 37 members of our normal travel party, right? And that was including the players. So long story short, we all, from Brad, myself, our entire staff had to do a little bit more because we were short-staffed. So I was put into a defensive drill with the guys, and I actually only had to play offense that day. And so maybe 10 possessions, I was able to play a pick and roll, and Jaylen Brown had to guard me, Kemba Walker had to guard me, Tremont Waters had to guard me, Jason Tatum had to guard me, and I got 10 possessions in the pick and roll where I'm the ball handler, and I think all of the possessions Enes Kanter was in the pick and roll coverage. So I'm out there, I'm bouncing, and I didn't even pop any or leave that day. But about 6 of the possessions, I looked pretty good. So I took the clips from the practice film off. I recorded it on my phone. Yeah. And I posted it on my Instagram because my youngest son and I got into an argument about the defense that I played on Allen Iverson in 1997. So I was like, yeah, I still got it.
Well, a lot of our listeners are too young to have seen you play. I just want to give a memory because it's very good to see you, by the way. I haven't seen you in so long.
I look like I'm the only one that's Asian, but that's a different story.
No, come on.
Yeah, it's a different story.
Smoke looks very old for context.
I was saying, don't tell him that.
Yeah. So people didn't get to see you play. So this is a true story, and I'm glad there was a line about it in the book. So I remember people talking about, like, I'm maybe in my mid-20s, and somebody says something about a Shammgod. Oh, he has Shammgod, whatever. And I looked at the move, and I was like, well, that's Jerome's move. Like, that's what Jerome did. And I'll never forget, I think you did it to Kevin Johnson once, because Smoke had it on, because I went to find it on YouTube yesterday.
You're pretty sharp, Spike.
Yeah,
you're pretty sharp.
I remember because Smoke had it on had that game on VHS, and I remember specifically being at Dwayne Vargas's house, and they would rewind it and play you getting Kevin Johnson, and all react as if it had just happened every time. Yeah. So you were really, really good, and so you mentioned in the book, like, just you were really fucking good, man. And you mentioned in the book that you had other offers, not just Penn. You had D1 schools that would give you a full ride, like people, historical basketball schools, Do you look back at that and think, hey, if I had gone to one of those schools, I know you're happy that you went to Penn, but do you think if you went to one of those schools, your basketball career maybe ends up in a different way than it ended up?
No, I never really thought about it that way because, I used to always say, anytime like we was at home or on the block, I used to say, like, I played professionally for 14 years. Like, I lived in 6 different countries. Like, I never thought that that all of these things would happen. And the one good thing about Philly was, and the Big Five, was that even though I went to Penn, I still felt like I would have to compete against Villanova and Temple and St. Joe's and LaSalle, every year, and especially in the summer times. So when all the guys were, we had the Sunny Hill League, the Sunny Hill College League. So I never really felt like that I missed out on a basketball experience. And it's probably because Philadelphia was so unique with so many schools and so many guys coming back in the summertime. And I think those, workouts at Gusting Lake with John Harnett and Tennis Young, and, I think all of those things actually helped me to get better, on top of the coaching staff we had at Penn. And that's why I said in the book, Fran O'Hanlon was the one who actually showed me the move. And, he's the head coach at Lafayette now. But even I was in Africa in 2018, and my youngest son, who I keep referencing, we were there with Basketball Without Borders and NBA Cares, and God Shammgod was there. And so my son walks up to him and says, and I think he's 8 at the time, was you the first one to do the Shammgod, or was my dad? Yeah.
And what did he say?
He didn't even answer me. He just kind of walked away from him. Yeah. So.
Yeah, when you get it named after you, I think you kind of just have to take credit for it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Do you have a mental Rolodex of like legend? So Kevin Johnson is actually a guy who I feel like would be a 2020 guard, do you have like a mental Rolodex of like famous guys that you got?
Famous guys that I got?
Like famous guys that were guarding you that you got.
It's probably the other way around. Famous guys that I was guarding that got me.
Oh yeah.
Again, I keep going back to this. So the clip on my Instagram that was followed by the 6 clips from practice was the Pacers versus the Sixers, Iverson's rookie year. And so I'm pleading with my son, Roman, you got to play both ends of the floor. Like, you got to be a good defender as well. And he's like, Dad, you always telling me this. Like, I bet you wasn't a good defender. So I find a clip of me guarding Iverson. And Iverson took about 9 dribbles, and he doesn't shake me, and then he goes to the hole and he throws up a scoop shot and miss. And I'm like, yeah, see, I told you I was a lockdown defender. I told you that. And then to Google, well, unfortunately, he Googles the box score from the game. And he says, he had 37. He had 37. He was killing you. So,
Wow.
But yeah, I can't say, I mean, yeah, we had a clip. I showed him a clip of me with The Last Dance and me playing against the Bulls and Michael Jordan, and I lose him on a play, and I turn my head and he respaces. They kick back out to him. I close out, and I close out short, and he hits a three. And he's like, "Yeah, your hand wasn't up when you closed out." So it's probably more so the other way around.
Wow. Your assistant coach for the Celtics now. I think about a guy like Brad Wanamaker, who had a kind of similar career path to you, in that Philly guy, went and played overseas for a while, comes back and now sort of remakes himself as a really dependable bench guy. What's your relationship like with him, and how do you feel like your stories are similar?
I mean, I kind of, even though I told you guys I'm not a Sixers fan, I'm a Philly fan. So all of the guys that are from the Philadelphia area, whether I knew them before they made it to the league or not, like I always root for them. Or even on the road, if I get a chance to see them, like I go out of my way to speak or whatever. But for the past 2 years, like just watching Brad, we used to have this program called the Hood and Rich program, and Hood stood for helping our own develop. And Pat Grant and Juan Barrow and myself, we kind of started that, and Brad and his brother Brian played for us for a little bit. And then he transitioned and started playing for Positive Image. So I've known Brad, since he was, I'm gonna say, 12, 13 years old, and not from a mentor standpoint, but like we've known one another. So to have him here as a Celtic and watch, his career, like my Penn team went and played against Pitt, and I can't say I saw this coming in terms of him being as productive as he is in the league. But he's just been phenomenal, man. He's a pro. I mean, obviously he's a little bit older, but he's a veteran, man. He's craft. He's almost kind of like, we used to have this reputation in Philly as just, guards that just was hard-nosed and tough and nothing flashy, and just, knew how to play the game and played it the right way. And Brad is kind of epitomizes that. And he's just such like a good guy, like low maintenance, and he doesn't back down. Can't jump over a piece of paper, but that's a different story.
We take one final break to talk about our sponsor. That's right, our guy, Adam Kornblau, and Kornblau, the official law firm of the Process. Mike, I miss like live events. I miss us doing our events. But I think what I miss most are LL and Kornblau showing up in suits to our live events.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things. Kornblau, of course.
It's really their night.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, if you ask them, they would certainly say it was their night. Kornblau showing up in Underground Arts, buying 50 corn dogs for people, selling out of corn dogs, both at Underground Arts and the Franklin Music Hall. Just an excellent live show attender, but also an excellent personal injury lawyer. Him and his mom run Kornblau and Kornblau. It's the only personal injury law firm you need. It is the only one you're going to call up. You're going to get the person who you're hearing about. You see billboards for some, personal injury law firms. They're just what I want to say. Oh, they're just like referral services. You're not even really dealing with them. With Kornblau and Kornblau, you deal with Kornblau. He has a passion for this. And as we've mentioned a bunch of times, even if you don't have a personal injury lawsuit, he is there to help any Ricky listener with any legal issue. Medical malpractice is their specialty, but any sort of injury. If you're hurt at all, you got hurt at work, slip and fall, in a car accident, whatever, call Kornblau. It doesn't cost you anything. Nothing until he gets you results. If you think you have a case, give him a call or shoot him an email. 215-576-7200. Ask for Adam. Or email Kornblau at kornblauandkornblau.com. Kornblau, spelled with a K, The "and" in the email is spelled A-N-D, and the rest.
It's up to you.
Kornblau and Kornblau, the official law firm of the process. We're about a month away from the draft. What do you remember about the process that you went through of going to get drafted and that night, and what that's like for a player, to be inspected and then just have to wait?
I mean, I actually wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I remember waiting like 3 hours and 57 minutes to hear my name called that night. And you get shopped around and you got to go to different workouts, and sometimes you work out for a team multiple times, and you listen to all the questions in the interviews, and they say, we pick here, like a team will come bring you in to work out, and you don't know if you just a filler or if they're really interested in you at a certain slot. And so, share information with your agent. And so I actually thought I was going four different places, or I thought I could be picked by 4 different teams, 4 different slots, all in the first round. 16th pick come up, I'm like, I'm about to, I think I might go right here. And then the 21st pick came up, and then the 28th pick came up, and then the 30th pick came up, and then 2 hours later, while they were at commercial break, they said, while we were away, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected Jerome Allen, the 49th pick. And, I had kept seeing my name and my picture up on the screen, who's still available, right? And so when they were coming back, there's maybe like a 10-second delay before they actually started talking. So to see my picture up on the screen, it didn't automatically trigger that, I got taken while they were at the commercial.
So they didn't call you? You just found out watching TV? Like you didn't get a call or anything?
So this is 1995, right?
Yes,
and,
yes. Yeah.
They have phones though.
Yeah, but I was at my girlfriend's apartment.
Yeah.
My family kind of threw a draft party at my grandma's house, and I didn't want to watch it with anyone. I didn't want to be around anyone. So they got my grandma's backyard all decked out, and they got music and food, and my whole family is there. And I was right on LaSalle's campus, sitting in her apartment at Alani and Ogans in the dark, just watching the draft. And when I finally heard, when that was announced, I just dropped to my knees, thank God for the opportunity. Got up, jumped in her car, and then drove to my grandmother's house. And as soon as I pulled up, Smoke and Terry was standing outside cursing. This is bullshit. I can't believe he stinks, and I don't know what they doing in the league. And then their reaction got my grandmother upset. She didn't know anything about the draft, and I got out the car smiling and trying to hug everybody. I was like, man, can you believe I got drafted? I never thought I dreamed of playing in the NBA, but you think it's going to happen to the next guy. So I never thought that I would be in that position. So I try not to lose sight of it, because I was one of, at that time, if I'm not mistaken, 58 guys maybe in the world. So, but it's crazy. It's just waiting.
What is you mentioned Tremont Waters, who was a rookie on the Celtics last year, along with Carson Edwards as a point guard. I really like both of those guys. What's the hardest thing to teach rookies, and especially rookie guards, about transitioning to the next level?
Oof. I mean, there's so much.
I say this as a guy who hopes that the Sixers have some guards to eventually teach something to where they could, just the idea of dribbling and moving around and some shooting quickly even would be nice. So this is very informative.
It's as a teaching point guards, as they're transitioning into the NBA, it's the hardest position in the league, right? So it's we talk about patience and reading progressions and being able to set the kitchen table, knowing where the forks go, knowing where the knives go, where the cups go, and trying to keep everybody happy and making sure that you execute on what the coach wants. And and being a great communicator and understanding like what gets guys going, how you can kind of get the best out of guys. That's a lot to expect a guy to be able to walk right through the door and have mastery of. And so if I had to pick one thing to answer your question, I would probably say the hardest thing to teach is probably like reading progressions. And that's because the margin of error or the window to take advantage of a mistake at this level decreases significantly from college to the NBA because you're the best athletes in the world. They cover so much ground so fast. They're athletic, talented, their IQ, their savviness is just a lot. And so, and then you got all the other guys on the floor that want the ball. Like, yo, I'm open right here. You looked me off the last time. It was like, I'm just trying to run the play that coach said run it. So, yeah, I thought I had a clue my rookie year, and I realized that I didn't. But to kind of make it so that they don't feel like they're on an island all by themselves, I always try to tell our guards that even at 47, even after playing professionally for 14 years and coaching in this league for 5 years, like I learned something new every year. And so it's okay to be where you at on a timeline. Just keep your head down and be a sponge and don't be a know-it-all.
You've mentioned social media a bunch of times, and it's funny. I remember talking to Smoke like maybe 10 years ago about what high school would have been like for him and us if we had to deal with. Yeah, well, he was convinced he'd be dead, and I don't disagree. He probably would be. But thinking about the players that you coach now, right? Talking about like exposure and just in general, and like how much of them is exposed to the public and what they have to deal with compared to when you were playing. And so many of them are, you talk about going through what you went through, but you have your wife, you have your kids, you have an organization around you. You're 22 years old, 23 years old. You're going through all of what the NBA and being famous and being rich does to you with social media young. What can the league do? What can teams do? And I guess what can fans do to make this a more like a less difficult experience for what I perceive it to be? Because it feels like they have the weight of, look, even in the bubble, they have the weight of police violence on their shoulders. You're talking about 20-year-olds, Right. How do we make this better for them? Like, how do we make this a more positive experience?
I think that's a great question. And that goes back to Michael's last question, just in terms of some of the things that they have to learn, right? It's difficult. Like, I really wouldn't be able to like point out one thing. So I try to say, put myself in their shoes, like you said, at 22, with millions of dollars, access, right, followers, and when I say followers, meaning like not necessarily followers, but just fans of the game, right? So, people spend their hard-earned money, right, their disposable income on entertainment, and that's what sports is, right? It's entertainment. It's a release. It's an outlet. It connects so many from all different walks of life, right? But at the end of the day, we all have a vested interest, right? Whether it be in players, teams, or organizations, the sport itself. Again, like I came on you guys' show with my Eagles, hat on, and we're 1-4-1, right? But this is my support. Like, I am an Eagles fan, right? And so I'm passionate, and every time Wentz doesn't complete a pass, I'm throwing my hat around the room, and my son or my wife is getting upset because I'm too loud. But the point I'm trying to make is that at the end of the day, these guys are like human, right? And they have issues that the rest of society has, right? And so one of the things I thought Brad did an awesome job of was champion for our guys to have mental health resources, right? This was a couple of years ago. It's still present now. But just all of the things, the emotions, the mood swings that we go through, right, as normal people, these guys go through as well. The difference is some people get blinded by that they have a unique skill set on a basketball court, right? And so this long soliloquy that I'm on right now to answer your question is just pretty much coming back to that if more people could understand that they are human as well, right? I think it could not necessarily normalize their experience, but it could help them if I could champion for that. And now some guys don't make it easy on themselves, right? They think they got all the answers, they think they know everything, and they just think that they could say anything, right, or act any old kind of way, and they could be above us. But the good ones, this is me standing on a soapbox for the good ones. The good ones is like, I don't know, like, what it feels like to go, I'm just using this for a game. You know, Jason Tatum, our first game in the bubble, went 2 for 18. And I could only imagine what was said in the comments on whether it was that box score post or something like that. You know, everybody, like, you know, my own mother tells me, you know, this is what you should be running at this point in the game. And then I, you know, my oldest son is saying, you know, why didn't you run this? Or Smoke is like, fam, like, you know, y'all should have, you know, everybody has an opinion, right? And it's okay, I get it, it's understandable, but it's just like just really understanding that these guys are like human beings. And I'm trying to champion for the good ones. Some of the guys are assholes, and sometimes they like you try not to extend as much sympathy towards them as they deserve. But, you know, the older you get, the more patient you are. And a lot of times they act like that because they're really trying to deflect insecurities that they're not even aware that they carry, you know. So, in my opinion.
What was it like? You mentioned being down in the bubble. What was it like when the season was hanging in the balance after the couple teams staged basically a walkout the Bucks after the shooting of Jacob Blake by police over there?
Yeah, that was a crazy day. And so I was inside the town hall meeting, right, that took place. And, you know, for me, like, I was like, this is a moment in sports history, right? Mm-hmm. And so I stood on the back wall and held my phone up, and I took a picture of the room, right? Not necessarily focused on one particular guy. You know, it was 22 teams down there, so everyone knew who was inside the room. But just to have a reference to that moment in time, and not trying to compare it to the summit with Jim Brown and Kareem and Muhammad, but it was something I would never forget. And like any family, whether it's a large family or small family, like when you get together in a room or at the kitchen table and you have to decide on or make a decision, like, you know, you get raw feelings or the emotions, and not everyone is going to agree. But, you know, it was, I won't say it was chaotic, but it was real. And I wouldn't come on your show and lie, right, and say that, it was nothing, and we just talked, and it was like kumbaya. No, you know, there were some disagreements, and there was some tough information shared. And like I said, the whole bubble experience for me, like I felt so grateful just to be there, and especially in that room, at that time. And so it's something I'll never forget.
You've mentioned Brad Stevens. So ever since he got into the league, all we have to hear about is like, what a fucking genius Brad Stevens is, yada yada yada. So you as a as a former player and now working under him as an assistant coach, what makes Brad Stevens a great coach? Why is he a great coach?
So, people ask me this all the time, and here's my answer, and then I'll tell you guys 2 quick stories. All right.
Okay.
So here's my answer to that. He's not always right, but he's always prepared, and I think that's what sets him apart. Right? He prepares, and I'll lead into the first story. The first story is this: we're in the bubble, and this has happened before, but in the bubble, it's timeout. He addresses the team, and there's maybe, say, 30 seconds left in the timeout. Right, whatever he drew up, the time was still there before the guys had to get up out of the seats. So he leans over. And he says, guys, listen, at this point in the game, this is one of the timeouts they like to run. The other team we're playing against. I don't want to say the name of the team. He draws up a play, right? He's like, so if this guy starts here, there's the play. He drew it up verbatim. They come out of the huddle, walk on the floor, sideline out of bounds. That team ran that same play, that same exact play that he drew up. Now the team still scored, but it goes to my point, is that that's how hard he prepares. Like, he knows the other team's stuff. I would like to argue probably better than some of the other coaches know their own stuff. And it happened again later on in the same game, right? He came out again and he just leaned over. He's like, can you believe that, Jerome? Like, they ran the ATO I drew up, twice. I mean, they still scored on us, but they ran it up. But what most people don't know is, like, he has he's stoic and he stands there and he's like emotionless. This is what people would say to me. I was like, yeah, well, you looking at the same guy I'm looking at? Like, he's competitive. Like, he gets fired up. It's like, oh, no, he's always even killed. I was like, yo, you just don't know. So we're playing the last seeding game in the bubble. Teams get introduced, right? And guys walk out on the floor. The DJ's playing music, right? So they're not ready to throw the ball up yet. And so we're sitting there, right? And the DJ plays a song, and then he mixes in Rob bass, right? So you come in on the one, which is right before the hook, right? And he said, Rob bass, I want to rock right now, right? I'm Rob bass and I came to get down. So Rob bass starts, I want to rock right now. As he's starting that, Brad is singing along, right? and so I just bust out laughing. I said, yo, nobody will believe right before the game, you sitting on the bench talking about, I want to rock right now. I'm Rob bass and I came to get down, right? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's 90s hip hop. Like, and I just bust out laughing. So I'm only sharing that to say, like, the man is always prepared. Probably one of the most, like, you talk about family and just, like, even killed, and, like, he cares about people. Like, our families, our wives, our children can fly on the team plane anytime we want. It's a family atmosphere. And, that kind of, like, obviously this comes from the top down, but that's something that he's always been about since I've been here.
All right. Well, anytime Brad Stevens is anything good, I'm going to say it's a Jerome Allen play. I'm not going to.
I can't take any credit for that.
It was interesting. You talked about in the book. You talk about the struggles you went through as a kid. And you talk about how sometimes even now you still look at sometimes having like a full fridge. And feeling like that's a really special thing that you couldn't have, you didn't have as much as a kid. What's it like? Because you had a successful professional career, but you're not LeBron James. You didn't make all the money in the world.
Right.
And your kids aren't like crazy famous or anything, but they're more well off than you were. And what is it like raising kids that are going through a lot of the same things you are, but not, some of the same. They're not having to really struggle in all of the ways that you struggled.
Right. So I guess the issues, it's all relative, right? And the issues are different, right? So it may not be because we only have peanut butter and jelly and oodles and noodles, right? Or ramen noodles, as we would say, to eat, but it may be dealing with, right, the issues that come with a father who committed wire fraud, right? Or it may be just dealing with the issues of this time and social media, or having a daughter who takes a million selfies, right? Because, right, that's what, the world is doing now, right? And trying to make sure that, long fingernails and 4-inch eyelashes and just different outfits aren't the things that are driving who she is as a person, right? And so, these times that we're in, possess issues that are completely different from when I was growing up, right? Mm-hmm. And again, it might not be the monetary issue, but they're still there. And so when I talk to them about like what I didn't have, they really not trying to hear it, right? Or they'll just say, "Oh, for real?" and then brush it off. Not because they think I'm a liar, but it's just, it doesn't necessarily resonate with them all the time because they're trying to figure some stuff out, on their own. And again, one thing the book helped me with was that, again, I had this, like I said, this disdain for access and privilege, right?
Yeah.
But wasn't I too trying to afford those same things to my children? And again, it goes back to the hypocrisy, right? But it's like I'm just in a position to try to make sure that they can, those things, they can sustain those things throughout their life. It's like any parent. Like, I pray every morning and every night for them, for their protection, and I pray that they make correctable mistakes, not life-altering mistakes. And just because they don't have to eat ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly out of necessity, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have their own issues, whether I can relate to them or not. I'm not here to lie to you and say I relate to everything that they struggle with. That's, sometimes like my biases or, just my way of thinking won't allow me to make that connection. But my love for them always trumps, all of it.
You mentioned there's a line in there about the lack of character. A failure of character is different than a lack of character. And it reminded me of something that Obama said a couple of years ago just about that. He was like, the world's messy, like good people do bad things, bad people do good things, so on and so forth. I guess that, like, isn't the real question, how do you tell the difference between a failure of character and a lack of character, right? Like, how do you, in yourself and other people, like, that isn't that like the hard part is seeing somebody that did something terrible and trying to figure out whether it defines them or not.
Right. So, like, the one thing in trying to make that difference is, like, we are all the summation of our experiences, right? And like I said, this is not my story. It's part of my story, right?
Right.
And just use that as an example to say, again, in the beginning, I went through this whole list of things that I did, right? How I'm trying to help and trying to share these things with other people. Someone would say, how could somebody who would, fly 36 kids to Italy, right, for free, and take them to the Sistine Chapel and Vatican Square and Roman Colosseum and Bologna and Cesenatico, also, like, use his privilege as a head coach and kind of fudge the system to help somebody else, right? How are these things kind of like inside of the same person? And so, we end the book with, me being, like, kind-hearted and giving and selfless is like, but I also have bouts of envy and jealousy and all these things. And, we got to stir all these things up in the pot, right? To try to, when I talked about the failure versus lack, right, was saying if the reader stuck with me long enough, I could get to the point where they see everything that I carry, right? But at 47, I'm seasoned enough, and whether it was the exposure that brought these things to the forefront, but I'm seasoned enough to say, like, on a certain day, right, I have bouts of these things that, if unchecked, these things could spill out into the world, right? And it's like, we talked about it, like, at the job and me wanting, the responsibility of performing a certain exercise and that not being awarded to me, right? And then me looking like, I think I'm qualified, or I think I know enough to be able to get that done, right? And just because that wasn't the case, now my face is frowned up, or I'm losing sight of, wait a minute, like, you're an assistant coach of the Boston Celtics. There's a gazillion people that would die to be in your position, right? When I first got the job, I would have picked up the towels, picked up, the cups. I would have drove the van, put gas in the van, carried all 15 guys on my back. And now when we get in certain places, right, we have this sense of entitlement or this expectation that, we are deserving of certain things. Like, sometimes those things happen. I'm just using my job as an example. Sometimes those things happen to not every human being, but to a lot of human beings. But the good ones don't get lost in that, or don't let that consume them to the point where that forces them to act a certain way, right? And so what I'm saying is, a failure versus lack, like, can be really not necessarily defined. Most people can have a better understanding of it when they could say, if you look at the totality of someone's life or their experiences, right, the summation of them, like, will really kind of give you the true valuation of who they are. And that's, like, really what I tried to stand on. And it may be an area that's a gray area that's populated on both sides, but that's kind of like what I truly believe.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, good.
Yeah, that's the hard part about knowing about famous people, right? Is that we don't get the whole picture. It's impossible. We see one great thing they did. They did an awesome charity thing, and we don't hear anything about them for 2 more years. So they're the greatest people we know. Or they got doing something terrible, got caught doing something terrible. It's the only thing we know, and that's I think it's sort of the problem in what we do a little bit, in that we talk about basketball players that we don't know, who do bad things and do good things, and we make these judgments based on what we see, and we just don't see that much. That's I think the tough part of it. You got in speaking of like having a small thing blow up into something big. You got caught on camera getting into a whole thing with Marcus Smart, just a loud argument with Marcus Smart. And, we hear about these things all the time on successful teams and unsuccessful teams. What is the difference between that being something healthy that happens, just like brothers, and something that is not healthy? Like, how can you tell the difference within a team where it's something normal and it's something abnormal?
Right. So in the moment, right, you see it, right? And someone may say, oh, what the hell is going on over there, right? In the moment, regardless of where it's viewed from, right? But like I said, and I hate to keep saying like in the book, but the one of the things Brad forces us, for lack of a better way of saying it, to do as a staff is to really model the right temperament in any type of dispute, right? And so, as much as I wanted to say, man, I'm not trying to hear that BS. Like, I don't know who he think he talking to. The reality of it is my reaction in the moment, I was wrong, especially like as a black man, right? Like, me trying to model the right posture when there's friction is important when I'm dealing with some young men that look like me, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they look like me or not, just period, right? From my position. And so, like most people don't know, when we got back in the locker room, Smart was extremely apologetic, and he was upset and sad for his own, behavior. But nobody saw that, right? And we were actually it was a race to see who could apologize first. He actually beat me to it, right? And then I was like, nah, I was wrong for my reaction. But Smart, my man, he's unreal. There's nobody like him in this league. I've seen him guard 5 positions. I've seen him guard centers, 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s, the bus driver, the security guard, the person, Aramark that's making the popcorn, but yeah.
Lock the popcorn guy up too. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The interesting question, and I'm not going to ask you for any specifics or anything, but broadly, there's Simmons and Embiid, there's a conversation about those guys. It's like they don't fit perfectly together, and they're too young, high drafted, star type players. And there's all this talk, because people love to do it, about friction between them and stuff. And I think that I personally think that kind of stuff is a little overblown. But you don't hear that as much about, or at least I don't, about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, despite the fact that both of those guys were high draft picks. But prior to last year, there was the Kyrie season, which notoriously, not asking you to say anything about it, but didn't go as well. Personally and stuff. And so I just want to know, as a coach, as a guy who's been the head coach of a college team and now as an assistant coach on successful NBA team, what is the right, are there certain personalities that just aren't going to go together if you're their star players and you just have to live with it? Or are there ways to, make it work in that sense? And how do you take that on yourself as a coaching staff?
I guess that's if you had the recipe for that, you could put it in a bottle, and you would be a gazillionaire. I'll just say that from my standpoint, this is always what I try to go back to, right? And this is the truth. God has been patient with me. At 47, there's some things that not only that I'm still working through, but that he just allowed me to just waddling, right, while he worked on me. And so with that being said, what I try to do is extend that same amount of patience. And I'm not God, but I try to extend patience to guys who I might not see where they're at, right? So I just try to like preach the right stuff, right? The stuff that, I try to deliver Brad's message, right? And I try to make it about others, right? And I try to make it about the team. And again, we're in a nowadays it's like everything that we try to preach as a coaching staff, the periphery kind of like tears it apart. Like there's everybody either working on their own brand or have their own brand. You got 20,000 fans in the arena screaming their names. They got agents, they got families, they got girlfriends, wives, they got all these other individuals kind of in their ears telling them the things that not necessarily that they want to hear, but just really their bottom line is they're focused on that particular individual. And then we get them in a setting where we're trying to take all these individuals and mold them into to one unit. Like it's extremely difficult. And so when you have the clashes of personalities or fits, guys don't fit, or there's friction, I try to look at it like, what have we exhausted all the opportunities, all the resources, or all the approaches to try to get these young men to buy in to what's going to make us the most successful. And I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. I just try to approach it from that standpoint with the appreciation that, sometimes these guys get on your nerves, and but with that being said, if it work out, it'd be great, because I do believe both those two young men that you reference are pretty special talents, and if they ever get it together, it's going to be, I think the city of Philadelphia will be happy.
What do you do when you have a guy on your team that says the earth is flat? No, I'm just kidding. I'll leave that.
Yeah, I was about to say, one of the things you just talked about when you said you see guys in one setting, right?
Yes. Yep.
We might not know the entire story, and I know Kyrie's gotten a lot of grief about that comment and even some of the things that he said, but I had 20 kids in North Philly at the movie theater at Broad and Oxford when Uncle Drew came out, and I mean, Kyrie made sure that all the kids had shoes and shirts and took care of everything, and it was nothing for him. When I say nothing, meaning like not the gesture was just like easy, but I mean, he at his core, he's genuinely a good guy, and a lot of people never really get a chance to see that side of him because because he may choose not to show that. But I know, whether he said the earth was flat or not, I know how much he's done for the kids, and I appreciate him.
What's not flat is his integrity.
That's right. He is round.
There's Brown helping his branding for a little bit if you need that.
Yeah. Well, look, man. It takes a lot for us to have a member of the Celtics organization on this podcast, especially after this year, man. After the sweep, I mean, you couldn't even let us get one. You couldn't let us get one.
I didn't want one. We deserved it.
I mean, at least I came on with my birds.
That's right.
Oh, you know what? Actually, that's one thing I wanted to ask you. So there's a story in the book about you wanting to go to. So you're 47. I'm 44. You were 4 years older than me, and so you were old enough, sort of, to potentially go to the parade when the Sixers won in '83, and your mom wouldn't let you go.
Right.
Did you get to go to the Eagles parade?
No, right? But what I will tell you is Marcus Morris
Oh, yeah.
had the game on at his house, and only Eagles fans were invited. So it was his family, and it was my wife and I and my youngest 2 children. But I felt like I was on Broad Street after they won it and at the parade, because my oldest 2 children were in the streets heavy and they were giving me a play-by-play. And so even though I wasn't there, I felt like, listen, I was on the Celtics plane. Most of the time we get on the team plane, we either have regular clothes on or team issued stuff. But every road trip we had leading up to the Super Bowl, that's all I wore was Eagles gear on the plane. Reggie White jerseys, Mitchell and Ness starter satin jackets, Eagles hoodies, Eagles scullies, every road trip. So.
Well, I'm proud of you, man, and Philly's proud of you, even though you sold out, went to the Celtics. And the book is really good. It's called When the Alphabet Comes. You can get it at whenthealphabetcomes.com. It just came out, right? Like
it's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles.
Yep.
Bookshop, Book Baby. Yep.
You're an author, NBA player, NBA coach, Ivy League graduate. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I can't believe it myself.
Well, and like Mike said, the offer we only need 20 minutes a game.
That's it.
20
good minutes, run that pick and roll.
Yeah.
Once there's fans in the stands, they'll gasp at just seeing a pick and roll.
Crazy.
It'd be crazy, unbelievable. Never seen it before.
I'd take a 10-day if
all right.
if it came
All right,
over.
there we go.
We know some folks.
Thank you, man.
Thank you guys.
Thanks to Jerome, generous with his time. As we mentioned, whenthealphabet.com, whenthealphabetcomes.com, or just go to Amazon, just Google it. It's out there. Great book. Thanks to Jerome. We'll be back on Saturday for a lighter, more ridiculous podcast where we talk about the CNBC article that Scott O'Neill leaked. Just more normal, and we'll talk about enemies of the process. The 2020 list is up on the website now.
I sent my blurbs to Unterberger, and I was like, if any of this is, I can't tell where the line is anymore. And so I was like, you just gotta just cut it if it's bad. Just if it's too far, if I'm already pretty close. So just take that stuff out and save my life and well-being if you don't mind.
God bless him for giving you the Scott O'Neill one. It was the correct assignment.
Yeah.
The Scott O'Neill one.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. All right, we'll talk to you on Saturday. Are you down with TTP?
Yeah, lick face.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you. If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
Then I won't fuck with you.
but if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you!
Time for plan B.